Hi everybody, I hope you are all well. It's been a couple of weeks since you saw me because I had a bit of a break because I had obviously my week off where it was meant to be my holiday and it got cancelled and various other stuff came up and it was just a bit like I needed to have a break from stuff, and also I my hay fever was playing up, so trying to read through hay fever, not a good thing, or at least in my experience a couple of weeks ago, because it was really the pollen levels were high here. And then this week I've been back at work, so I have been reading this week, which has been good. What else has been going on? Friday, Stranger Things Series 4 Volume 2 dropped on Netflix, and oh my god, it was so good. I pretty much spent the 4 hours bawling my eyes out, and now, because of knowing what we know, I am starting to rewatch Stranger Things from the very first series, very first episode through, and the stuff that I'm seeing now that I didn't see before, it's just like, wow. That is incredible. Before I start this review, I just want to flag that I have put a community post this morning to explain that you're getting this review today, but you might not get my announcement video until tomorrow. And that is because today we're celebrating my dad's 60th birthday, which his birthday is tomorrow. But we're having a family get together, and because of situation, people being here, there, and everywhere, family and everything. I haven't been able to see my sister since my birthday, so I haven't been able to get my birthday present from her. I know what it is, but yeah, which has got me so super excited. But I haven't been able to get it, and I will be getting it today, and that will impact my reads going forward. Possibly to the end of the year. I don't know. It depends on how my reading goes for the rest of the year. So yeah, until I get that present, I can't film my announcement video. And obviously I'm going to be spending the day celebrating my dad's birthday with my family. So either, depending on when finish celebrating, you will either see the announcement video today or you're going to see it tomorrow. So just FYI, the announcement video is coming. But anyway, I am here to talk about the book I've been reading this week, which is Dangerous Women by Hope Adams. So Amazon actually recommended this book to me, and I thought, oh, it sounds quite interesting. I'll give it a go. It was only until I was about 2/3 of the way through this, I started looking into Hope Adams and discovered that this is actually her debut novel. Yeah. And I was like, really? You know how sometimes that you have debut novels and you can tell that they're debut novels, which I've talked about before, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, you can see that there is the chance for them to improve on certain things, certain aspects in the rest of the writing career, which can be really exciting to actually watch grow and develop. Is really great. But I genuinely didn't realise that this was a debut novel. and I'm like, okay, instant tick for Hope for that. In case you don't know what this book is about, Hope went to see this quilt. I'll show you on the back cover. This absolutely gorgeous quilt from the 1840s. I think she saw it at the V&A Museum. It was on loan. It actually usually is in Australia. And she went to the museum and she absolutely loved it. And it is a quilt that was made by female inmates on a ship called the Raja that was going to Australia from England. So they were all convicts, and it gave them something to do during the journey, a project and such, and they complete the project in time for their arrival. And yeah, so that's the inspiration to the story. She makes it very, very clear in the historical notes at the back that this is entirely fictional. There are some historical links to certain individuals, from real individuals from the past, but other than that, it is entirely fictional. So yeah, so this book is her fictionalized story of that voyage, was the women are making the quilt. One of the quilt makers, called Hattie, is stabbed on deck after one of the meetings, and it's all about the investigation of trying to figure out who stabbed Hattie, who's mortally wounded Hattie. what their motives are. And yeah, as it says here on in the blurb, on a ship that's packed with the guilty, how do you prove your innocence? So that's the general story. Now, if I had to flag something as being a possible improvement for Hope, as I said, this is her debut novel. I think structuring is something that she could look into. Now, this is a very difficult story to structure. I want to flag straight away. I am in no way saying that she needs to, completely rewrite and restructure her entire writing style. Far from it. The fact that I got 2/3 of the way through this book and only then found out that this was her debut novel, and I never thought that it was a debut novel up until that point, tells you that there is clearly she knows what she's doing, or she felt very comfortable with the structure that she chose. The bit that gets me is that because of what she did, it meant that the middle section was quite it was a bit lacking. It suddenly, the investigation at the very beginning is very tight and such, and then we've got this long lag, and then the ending is tight again. So it's the long lag, and the reason why that is there is because our very first chapter, we basically witness the stabbing. We then jump back into the few days before, or the day before the Raja sets off. I can't remember which one it is, and then we jump forward to the first day of the investigation, and this flipping back and forth is what happens throughout the book. Now, the middle section, you have this lagging because the chapters from the past become much longer, and that's because we are learning the backstory as the reader of all of these individual women, these convicts, and also women who are in other positions on the ship, those who are looking after these convicts and such, as well as, there's other crew members as well. So in order for us, the reader, to then go through the investigation, and it's like we know something that the investigators don't, it's like, this is a really interesting perspective. But as I said, because you've got these longer chapters where we're only focusing on one character, and then we're going to flip forward to the investigation of them being questioned, and then we're going back into the past where we're looking at another character for quite a bit, it does feel like a bit of a stalling of the investigation. I don't know if it would have been better if we learned things as the investigators found them stuff out, but then there's a lot of people, there's a lot of things of people's past, possibly, from people that you work with, people who you're friends with, people you went to university with, or had any kind of interaction with. You will know some things about them, you will not know everything about them, you will not know all the details of their life. So actually seeing these chapters where we learnt that extra detail, it gave more of a balance and understanding of why they do the things they do, why they react the way they do. That doesn't necessarily mean that the investigators on the ship need to know that information. So in a way, yes, it worked perfectly for understanding character and what they did and why they say the things that they say, but at the same time, it meant that middle section, it caused the investigation to stall. I did really like it when we got to points where, we'd learn a backstory, and then you see them explaining to the investigators what happened at the time of the stabbing, where they were and everything, and the choice words that they have, where it's like, well, I didn't lie, but I didn't necessarily tell the truth either. It's yes, being asked a yes/no question, and well, I didn't necessarily see that, but but what did you see? That kind of thing. It's the balance between the truth and a lie. I thought that was very interesting. So, but yeah, as I said, for me personally, I think the structuring is something that she could look to improve on, especially that midsection, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this kind of structuring is going to be applied to her next book. It depends on what the story is, really, I suppose. But the concept of having this stabbing take place on a ship where literally you cannot escape, because it's a convict ship, you cannot escape, but you're being hunted. But how do you prove your innocence? And I love the fact that with the quilt, because it's like patchwork quilt, everyone is working on their own section, and then they start to connect the sections together, and it is happening as the connections between characters and the events start to bring together. So for an idea for a story, and the way in which the process goes, it really does work. I did like the characters. There were a couple of characters I was slightly iffy about, but that was more of, I think, personality clashes. I'll put it that way. Between me and them, I just know that even though I admire them for the things that they had done in their past and do through the course of this investigation, doesn't necessarily mean that I'd be friends with them. I'll admire from a distance, but I will. I won't be meeting them for coffee, if you put it that way. I do love how Hope also wrote the women, and she writes the men very well as well. But the men, they're quite minimal in character, and they only have certain positions, like captain or the doctor. They're quite high positions in the ship. There are one or two that aren't, that are, more crew level base. Not to say that captain and doctor aren't crew, but you know what I mean. There's certain hierarchy, and there are, in the ship's crew, there are certain hierarchies that are still there. But yeah, they're mainly higher in that hierarchy that get presented to us. But yeah, all of the women had such interesting backstories. They had such depth to them. As I said, they all come from different levels of society. They're different ages. They have all of their own different stories. And I have to say, especially right now, because of what is happening with women's rights around the world and such, to have these women talk about horrific things that happen to them, like, I'm not going to say who, because obviously spoiler, but you have a woman who is raped, and she got revenge for that. Does that mean she should be convicted? It's there's just because I'm a poor woman doesn't mean that I should just take that me being raped and just go carry on with my life. I'm human. I have a soul. I have thoughts. I have feelings. It was there was a lot of discussions amongst them about right and wrong, and but I love that all of these women were so strong that I totally understand why they did the things that they did. And I thought they were so interesting. And I actually, when the ship docked at the end, when they got to Australia, I was like, I really hope for them that they did okay and that they made it. And especially one who you'll understand when you read the book, because her journey is pretty powerful one. I really hope that she did well for herself after this book ended. And funnily, one of the characters who I didn't grow attached to, but I was like, oh, okay, was called Becky. Yay! So another book with a character called Becky in it. Yay! I do like it when you find books that have your name in it, but yeah, it's not often that I'd see, because usually it's Rebecca, and occasionally they might get referred to Becky. Like I love the Shopaholic books by Sophie Kinsella. They're like a really light read that I just really like to go to from time to time, and the lead character is Rebecca Bloomwood, but everyone calls her Becky. So because she's a modern character, it's like, okay, yeah, Becky, that's, use that name. But in 1841, to only be referred to as Becky, I'm like, oh, okay, that's cool. I like that. So yeah, I did like that there was a Becky character. So I'm going to do a quick reading. So this is actually right at the beginning of the book. It's just a page and a bit. And yeah, it's all to do with the stabbing. And I just want to shout out to Hope Adams at her dedication. It says this book is dedicated to the real women who made the Rajah quilt. The work of their hands abides. It's, yeah, the fact a character comments about how I am going to die, obviously, but that quilt will live on. My blood is in that quilt because of pinpricks, and everything. That quilt will survive longer than me, and I just hope people like it, even though people don't necessarily like me. And I just loved that. I thought that was such a poignant thing to say. So here we go. I wish I didn't know, she thought. I wish I'd never found out. I wish I could be the person I was this morning before we sat down to our stitching. The sea moving past the ship was almost black in the fading light. When the Rajah was now in the middle of the Southern Ocean, there was only a short time between sunset and darkness. She leant over to look more closely at the water. It rushed past the hull, curling up into small waves which slid away to lose themselves in larger waves or long swells of water. For a long time she'd been afraid of it, walking along with her eyes fixed on the planks of the decks, seeing the ocean only when it couldn't be helped, catching sight of it from the corner of her eye. Now, after many weeks at sea, she'd grown used to it, was in awe of it, and loved it, albeit warily. She'd fallen into the habit of going to the rail when the stitching work was finished. She liked to stand there for a few minutes, alone, trying to see what lay beyond the line of the horizon, breathing in the wide water and the high sky that seemed to go on and on till you grew dizzy staring up at it. Now the only thought in her head was what she learned. Every feeling in her heart was muddled, and the fear that had overcome her since she found out, discovered by noticing a gesture for the first time, wouldn't go away. There had been a shadow before, near the coil of rope, and she peered behind her to see if anyone was there, looking at her. She saw nothing. But what was that noise? She held her breath though the only sound was the familiar groaning of ropes in the rigging. Then she felt a change in the air around her, became aware of someone coming up beside her, and turned, ready to tell whoever it was to go away and leave her alone. Pain took away her words. She reached out, but as soon as it sliced into her clothes, as soon as it pierced her skin and reached her flesh, the blade was gone, and whoever had held it had disappeared too. And there was nothing left but an agony of white shining pain, and her own hands suddenly scarlet and wet as she clutched them around herself. The knife has killed me, she thought, and a sound filled the whole of her head and poured out of her mouth in a torrent of screaming. How is that written by a debut novelist? That caught me, and I was like, oh, okay, atmosphere. She knows how to write atmosphere. Her descriptions of the appalling hygiene on the ship, the way that the ship moves, the storms, the claustrophobic nature, the heat, the sweat. It's just a really great, tight, as I said, tight story, but at the same time the middle did lack because of the structuring that she chose. Now she may not necessarily choose that same structuring for her next book, but yeah, but if she were to, I think if she made it just a bit tighter, then that way it would mean that the middle section would be stronger. So because of that, I would probably give this like a 3.75 out of 5. Yeah, if that was just a bit tighter and such, then I would have given it probably a 4 out of 5, because it's not perfect, a book, but it is a really strong debut and a good story that, yeah, I found really quite interesting. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Dangerous Women by Hope Adams. So let's ask my usual questions. Would I read this again? Yeah, I think I would. Yeah. And actually, reading out that beginning section, now that I know what the ending is, it's like, oh, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Would I read any more of Hope's books? Yeah, I think I give it a go. She's definitely got a skill in historical fiction, and I'd be intrigued to find out what other books she has planned, because this is relatively recent. I think this was this year, quite possibly. Oh no, 2021. So yeah, so relatively recent. So yeah, I don't know what she has planned next, but we will just have to see. Would I recommend this to anyone? Yeah, I would. If someone wanted, a good historical read that's not too heavy and not too bad a pace, then yeah, I would say give this one a go. And especially the fact that it's a very strong piece of historical writing that's focused around women. I think that's a really great thing to have. So thank you, Hope Adams, for writing this book. So those are my thoughts on Dangerous Women by Hope Adams. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Entirely to you, I'll let you decide. And as mentioned at the beginning of this video, I will be back with my announcement video either today or tomorrow, depending on how the celebrations for my dad's birthday goes. Alright guys, bye!